Da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, 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 na-na-na. Here we are with the upgrades for the Free Roam
Oh
podcast.
my god.
Mr. Joraptor did something amazing for you guys.
Yeah,
The
I
peer
could not
pressure
take
worked.
it anymore. I could not take it anymore. Yeah, I upgraded the mic, but if you're like watching to the live stream on the Luke Stevens live channel, then you see that it's still work in progress. I'm still like I still need to attach the microphone arm to the desk. Maybe that happens during this podcast. If you like have a nice monologue about Starfield, then I might have some time to put this together. But for now, I hope this is better. I want to see the chat, and I hope this investment was worth it.
I mean, we'll tell based on like if we get that. I think it's one guy that comments like every podcast.
I know.
It's like
I know. I did it for you. I did it for you.
yeah. I think it sounds good. I don't see it peaking like crazy or anything. I can also adjust it on my end, but I
Nice.
Kinemansky, no more eggplant emoji, Mike. Yes, indeed. We are here to talk.
I mean, I still have the other mic as well, so I can like do crazy duo collab. This looks really weird. We're not gonna do that.
Just surrounding it every angle.
Okay, that looks really good. Yeah, thanks for having me again on your channel and for doing the show. I mean, we both finished Starfield, so we're gonna talk about that. But first, I have some other really good news because you never guessed it, but the trophies dropped for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So a few weeks before release. So I'm gonna spoil everything for people looking forward to it. If you finish the game now,
for all the person looking forward to it.
for the single person, yeah, it's almost time. We're in October, which is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, the year has like it started kind of slow and now it's snowballed and it's a little bizarre that we're so far along, but we have some big stuff. A lot of the biggest stuff though got delayed into early next year, so it seems like February in particular is going to be insane. But you know, it's good. We have stuff to talk about. It's a lovely day, and you know what? I'm happy that we're all here able to chat together. I'm very much looking forward to these discussions because we have a couple of tidbits. There's some more reporting out on what happened and went down with AC Shadows' delay, and what, more importantly for some people, what they are and are not changing, because there were a lot of people, I think, that were maybe they just don't know how game development works, or maybe they just were being overly hopeful. I don't know. There were people suggesting that like Yasuke was going to be cut from the game and stuff, and it's like that's just not how that works. So we'll talk about all of that stuff, and then of course the Starfield DLC, which surprisingly enough, people might be wondering why I keep calling it a DLC, even though this is supposed to be the first expansion. It's because it is quite small, and I think calling it an expansion is very generous, but we'll talk about it. I don't know what Joel Raptor thinks of it. I have not talked to him before the show or anything. I don't know. Maybe he loves it. I don't know. But we're going to get into it. But before we do that, of course, thank you to everybody here with us live on Luke Stevens Live. Thank you to everybody watching the VOD after the fact. And also thank you to everybody who listens on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform of choice is.
Almost 300 reviews. So if you are on Spotify, leave the 5-star. I never looked at the Apple podcast thingy. I'm a Samsung boy, so how are we doing over there? Can someone grab their iPhone, search the Free Roam podcast on Apple Podcast, and see? Because we've never like given any love to the people over there. Okay, I can see. I'm here. I don't know if I can see the... Oh my god. I think we only got Samsung people because we only have one 5-star review. But... And 53 Nights, I see you. Don't give that 3-star review. you will get on the wanted list. You don't want that. But yeah, on Apple, we need some love on Apple Podcasts as well. And only 5 stars is allowed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we are out here with our
Thanks, Nell. Appreciate it.
our nice microphones every week. I mean, okay, not every week, a lot of weeks.
I'm not gonna change my microphone every week. That
Yeah,
would be a
that's
little
the
too
new
crazy.
thing. Yeah, every week Joe
Yeah.
Raptor swaps it out. He's gonna have that like old timey tin can looking one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I'm very much looking forward to it.
But Starfield.
Yes, Starfield.
Um,
What? So little hazard just for everybody at home. Basically, the missus has a doctor's appointment today, so I may need to bail for a few minutes to leave things to Jor to hold down the fort while I help with the boys, get them down for naps real quick, probably just like 5 minutes. But
Sure.
that's if I bail suddenly, that's where I'm going. Okay. But yes, Joe Raptor, what did you think of Starfield's DLC? Why don't you give me the monologue?
I personally did not really pay attention to a lot of the pre-launch stuff. So like I kind of went in blind. I did like the game more than you did at launch. Um, and I thought it was kind of interesting that they went for the more traditional approach instead of course, Starfield. Like a lot of people did not like the fact that there were a lot of planets with nothing on them. So they were like, hey, let's make just one planet, basically add a new zone to this game. And the sort of pre-launch material looked very interesting. The zone itself, I think, looks really, really good, especially the city and some of the indoor areas. So I went in kind of with an open mind. I was like, okay, this looks cool. I'm down for more Starfield. I have not touched the game since last year, so I got myself the rover. I'm like, I don't know who decided to make it like control like it does. It really like I went back to like a PS2 type situation where you of course by simply moving the analog stick move the rover as well. So I was in that starting area running people over, and I was first like pressing the right trigger. And that's of course your lasers. So I was shooting people, and I got a bounty immediately in this new area because I was like, "What the heck?" Yeah, because it moves like it really felt like I was playing like one of the Borderlands games because it kind of moves like that as well, where you simply.
I will say I was told by a modder, so I don't know if this is true or if they just were putting it in simpleton terms for me to understand it. But I was told by a modder that it's basically on the back end a repurposed jetpack, like boost pack from the game. So it uses the same control scheme as the player running effectively, and then it uses the boost and all those same mechanics. So it's just like a reworked version of a boost pack that has wheels and stuff and interacts with the floor more. But that's basically why it controls the way it does. Okay. Because it's not like a totally different thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you like summon it or not? It just spawns next to your spaceship and then you take it out. And if you then leave it, you can't like summon it, right?
Yeah, it spawns next to your ship. You can fast travel to it. In like
to
the map.
the car. Oh, okay.
I think if you pull up the map, the actual like planetary map, not planetary, the mini map, you can do that. But yeah, it's not as intuitive as you would have thought.
No.
But yeah, I mean, my broad strokes, just before I let you get into detail while I run and help put the kids down, is, you know, I found it extremely short. I found it to be very lacking in content. I found the writing to be ridiculously dry. There's only really 2 new enemy types in the entire thing. And even then, like the whole DLC, no spoilers, but the whole DLC, they suggest you're going to encounter something really cool, and it just doesn't happen really. And I found it just overall underwhelming, and I felt like they needed to hit this out of the park, and instead they just sort of bunted it because everybody already had it pre-ordered and they didn't need to do anything particularly amazing. So I just found it really, I think the best way I can describe it for me is it feels super phoned in. It feels very low effort. It feels like they didn't feel like they needed to convince anybody that they still had it. It feels like they just did more Starfield, which for Starfield fans, I'm sure is exactly what they wanted. But for me, it was just really frustrating to see that it doesn't play any differently, it doesn't feel any different. It just feels like a quest line cut out of the base game. But that's
Yeah. I
yeah.
get it in one sense, and if you need to go,
Yeah,
you
I'll
go.
keep the
But like,
headphones on, so I'll listen while you talk, but I'll be
oh,
back.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So for me, what I like when I played this, because I do agree with you, it's pretty short. I finished it in like, I think like 5 hours. Like by just focusing on the main story. There are quite some side missions, and to be honest, like there are some side quests. Like one is called Legacy of the Fang, where you go into this pretty cool space pirate sort of hideout, which is pretty in depth. So I did like the quest there, but overall, I do get it. I'm not sure if maybe they had to like knock it out of the park, but that's what we also are seeing right now. People just don't really care. There was like no big spike in the Steam charts at all for this, which is kind of wild. So it feels like the people that were already playing just were continuously playing and are now just making a detour to this new planet, and maybe some people jump back in. Curious to hear, of course, your take if you're watching and you played it as well. But my overall thing was, this game just, they have very cool stuff going on. I still like the sort of immersion that you're like going back, jumping back into it. I did kind of miss that, walking around on your ship. Like they still, the space setting they really nailed, but they really did not add anything in the gameplay department for me. I was just using the Beowulf, which like the rifle that you can shoot very rapidly, and I was just using that throughout the whole DLC. They do add some new weapons, but they're very, very meaningless. Like they have some cool effects, but nothing new. Some are just reskins of weapons we already had, but now they shoot like a different type of ammo, and that's kind of it. So I was really missing the sort of, okay, but you have this really cool setting. We are fighting these enemies that are teleporting. I have like a million powers, and I'm just using the one that turns me invisible. Like that's kind of what I'm doing in this DLC, and that just worked throughout the whole. I did not have to change my tactic at all. Finding other weapons, I tried them for one mission. I was like, no, the Beowulf I was using was way better. So they had a cool setting, but they are not changing anything to the pretty bare bones gameplay. So I was hoping after a year, like that this DLC took a year is kind of crazy. This feels like a DLC that is out like 3 months after launch, where they don't listen to any of the feedback. They're just like, we already made this while making the game, and we're just putting it out so you can keep playing. And usually, you want them to listen to the to feedback. 16 times the weapons. No, it's really. I know it's a joke, but there are like 6 new weapons, and there are, I think 2 are actually new, or 3, which is not great. Favorite Faroon house, asks 53 Nights. To be honest, I don't know the names by at the top of my head, but I did like some of the missions and the sort of choices you had, without spoiling anything. But yeah, you can, of course, it's Bethesda Game Studios. Like you can approach some missions in different ways and have different outcome. But the changes really are, okay, if you kill this character, they cannot be your companion. And a companion in this DLC, there are 2. That's just a crewmate, like you can find in a bar in random cities as well. So it's kind of cool to have this character that you know from a mission walk with you throughout the DLC. But they don't add a lot. Like they don't have their own dialogue. I think during the main missions, at least I did not see them. So while the roleplay element was kind of cool, okay, excuse me, I'm gonna do this and this, and then I'm favoring this character over what the other character wants. So I did kind of like that, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. And what I liked about the core, the main game, is it felt like I was kind of surprised more. I thought the sort of jumping between between planets and going to one planet just to go to an outpost. I know not a lot of people like that, but it did feel like a sort of more of an adventure. This DLC, it really felt like you already, when you land and you just stay on this planet, the kind of the sort of magic that Starfield for me has, where you're this like this like astronaut like going around all these different planets, that just wasn't there. You're just stranded on this planet, and you just, like any other RPG, you go around. There are icons on the map. Hey, there's a location, and just like in the base game, they don't reward that exploration very well. Again, there's that one Legacy of the Fang side mission. You will stumble upon that. There's like a tomb, and then you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, I wanted to see more of that, because very often I would go to a location. Whoa, it's pretty big. I'm going down. Takes me like 30 minutes to clear all these enemies. And then I have like a chest with random loot. So it can be good or bad. It's mostly bad, because it's just like the bang bang shotgun from the base game, but with a scope on it. Like, there's nothing really new there. It's so wild, the price, and I want to hear Luke's take on this as well. And I'm curious why they did it, but $30 for this DLC is wild if you compare it to Phantom Liberty that we got last year. One of the best DLCs ever. The amount of unique new weapons in that DLC, for that price, like, there are, I think, 20. At one point, you're like, maybe there are a bit too many, because the impact of finding a unique weapon kind of decreased because you were finding a lot of them. They were just like hidden on the map. Of course, every side mission almost gave you a very cool unique weapon. And in this DLC, there are 6 new weapon types. Again, most of them are reskins or weapons you already know with a different ammo type. And yeah, there's nothing really cool, nothing new to them, and you have to be lucky to get them. There's only one unique weapon with like a unique name that you can find in the world, but I wanted to see more of that. So overall, I do agree that it's kind of lackluster overall, and I want to see what you guys are saying now. Your Steven's live. Yeah, I'm taking over now. Let's talk about Suicide Squad. Season 3. It sucks, right?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, wow. I said Suicide Squad and it summoned you.
Yeah, I just appeared. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy how it works?
So, but you did hear what I was saying, right?
Yeah. There were a couple of parts where it dropped out for me because I got kind of far away from the receiver. But I do see most of what you're saying. The part where it kind of dropped out was when you were discussing individual little tidbits of the story. But I do think, some comparisons you brought with, like, I think broad strokes, it's just, what is this DLC supposed to do? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because it feels like normally with big games and big expansions, there's like, this is the narrative DLC, this is the gameplay DLC. Or, this is the DLC that explores some topic, and then this is the DLC that gives you a new area, And that's typically how these companies approach it. Even past ones like Far Harbor and Nuka World kind of fit into that mold. Narrative DLC, new area, faction kind of thing. And with this, I just genuinely don't understand how this took them a year. I don't understand what it's really supposed to be, other than it was sold as, we're doing handcrafted. The whole thing's handcrafted, one planet. It's really one fishbowl on a planet. And I just don't understand what the hook is. Like, what is the driving force? What does this do that should bring me in as a player, or bring me back as a player if you played the base game? And I just don't think it really does much. Most people say it feels like more Starfield, which for some people is great, but I think that's my frustration, is I was hoping that it would be an improvement over some shortcomings in Starfield, or bring something new.
Yeah, and I would argue that it's not more Starfield in the way that I like to play that game, which was jump around to different planets and, yeah, go to these space stations and figure out, like, learn more about the factions. But okay, I'm now doing this faction mission. Oh, this is now like constantly being pulled in different directions. And this DLC doesn't have that at all. It's like pretty linear. Sure, there are some side missions, but it's like they all these missions start in the city. So you talk to these houses, you go to their own like instanced areas, you talk to them, you go out in the world, you return to the city to the same two characters every time to build this sort of machine. And that's kind of the whole gameplay loop for this DLC. So you're not really pushed to explore like during the main story. You're not, while on these missions, are being like, whoa, what the heck is over there? Let's try that out. And yeah, it just didn't work for me because for me this DLC really showed that the core gameplay of Starfield is just really bad. Like the moment to moment gameplay, there's just nothing really there. But for me, okay, now I'm in space. Oh no, I'm getting attacked by a ship. Let's board them. And I still like that aspect of it. But there's nothing like it because there's no need to go into space. So they completely left that sort of side of the game out. And then all that is left is there are a bunch of guys in a room. Shoot them. Go to the next room. There are more guys. Like you said, there are 2 new enemies, and they like you. It's not even that you are like, oh, I'm now encountering later in the DLC completely new enemies. No, you're fighting these enemies throughout the whole DLC, and the only new thing they do is teleport, and that's the only thing. So what is here? But like another big issue is the loot and how you're constantly finding these items that you already had in the base game. It's so wild to me, and they were kind of hyping up new weapons, and like for one, there's no reason to use them if you already got like a good loadout. I was fine using my Beowulf throughout the whole DLC.
Yeah.
And then when you do explore some part, like when you do go off the beaten path, the chance that you find something great is slim or almost non-existent. You're only finding, cool, they have a new space armor, but do you maybe, I think you already also have it, right? In one of the creations, it's like a legendary armor from Bethesda.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that, there's nothing in this DLC that will make, why would you change that outfit? Because it's the best in the game that you get for free through the creation. So it's super weird, man. There are so many weird things that a DLC like this should enhance.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, and we talked about this on stream earlier. It feels like no matter which way you try to evaluate it, it still comes up short. Like if you look at individual things like the story, maybe you find the story really compelling. Maybe you love the new art style of the pinks and the blues kind of mixed together. And that's enough for you to be like, this is amazing. I love it. Cool. But we can compare it objectively to other DLCs Bethesda's done, and more damningly to other expansions from other developers in their peer group. And this doesn't hold a candle to like Phantom Liberty, like nowhere near it. That was basically a new game standalone. This doesn't hold a candle to Hearts of Stone or Blood and Wine from back in like 2016 for The Witcher 3. This doesn't even hold a candle to Far Harbor for Fallout 4, the last single player game these guys made. So it feels like no matter how you look at it, whether it's based on quality or quantity, it doesn't hold a candle even to previous DLCs and expansions they've done. And so you just start struggling to find the justification for it. And from my perspective, I'm just really thoroughly disappointed after waiting a year for this, that it's not there's not more. I mean, it really is baffling. And I mean, even if we pull up just Fallout 4 DLC, I can show this on screen for anybody watching, and I'll describe it for everybody listening at home. But basically how this worked was they had, I'll zoom in on it here, Fallout 4 downloadable content. Okay, the game launched in, I believe, November of 2015. Okay. In March, they had the Automatron DLC and then Wasteland Workshop in April. Smaller DLCs gave like little things for new building, schematics for your base and stuff like that. So we can kind of disregard this because that's basically what they've done with Creations, would be similar stuff to that. Far Harbor launched 6 months after the base game. And Far Harbor was really good. It was sizable, really interesting writing. It was pretty compelling. And this is what people were hoping to get out of Starfield's DLC. Was something.
I mean, if you wait a year, that's what you expect. Like I also said, I'm not sure if you heard it, but this feels like a DLC that they launched 3 months after launch because no feedback from the base game seems to be included here.
Yeah,
it feels like.
Well, and even if you fast forward, like Nuka World launched in August of 2016, basically a little less than a year later, a year after the launch. And so they were able to put out Far Harbor and Nuka World, both significantly larger and more impactful and interesting and even like game affecting than this DLC. And this took them over a year. It's baffling.
Yeah.
And like you said, it doesn't seem to include any feedback. That's part of the reason I think it feels as though this, specifically Shattered Space, was just cut content from the base game. Like this is something they made a year and a half, 2 years ago, and have just been sitting on to sell as an expansion because it doesn't reference any of the frustrations of the base game. It doesn't even try to. And so either it was done before that and it's just been kind of sitting around, or they did make this in the last year and they just didn't care about any of the feedback. They're not concerned by it.
Yeah, I don't want to say that that's the case, but I mean, we only saw over shoulder footage of this before pre-launch. Like no, you want to believe, but I really think that this was kind of made in a vacuum, and I think for them, going back to the more handcrafted world, maybe that is the feedback that they were applying. Like that is what they thought, that they were like, people want more of that, so let's give them that, and then still make kind of the Starfield experience that, is based on the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Bethesda is not upset with how Starfield turned out when it launched. They're pretty happy with it, and this DLC I think confirms that because they're just doubling down on things like the way conversations work, things like the writing, things like the gameplay loops. All of that stuff is identical. They didn't try to do anything, and they of course have not acknowledged any issues with exploration or anything else. So the only thing you could potentially point to is the addition of the rover, which I do think is a good addition. They've added the maps, the city maps.
Maybe they wanted to wait for that, like that they were like working on that. They had this DLC finished first, and then let's focus on these quality of life things first, because playing this DLC without a map, oh my god, that would not, like, it already did not work for cities, but like this is actually a map where way more stuff is going on than on the other planets. So maybe that was one of the reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, it's either way. It's just kind of confusing, and I think that there's two sects of people right now. Well, maybe three. There's one group that just doesn't really care. They're checked out. Either they never cared about Starfield, or they tried, played it for an hour, were bored, and moved on. So there's those people out there, and they weren't ever going to come back to the expansion. Then there's another group of people who thought that Starfield had a lot of potential, and for various reasons, it just didn't come together because of poor exploration, the lack of foresight and forethought with how you actually get to points of interest on planets you land on. So like one of the most fun things about Bethesda games is just wandering through the wastes trying to find cool things. That basically was ruined by how they set up Starfield. And so like that's kind of where I fit in. I'm somebody who likes Bethesda games, and I feel like Starfield is it's almost like a masterclass in what they're not good at. And they actively avoided doing the things they were good at. And this expansion was supposed to be a return to form. We're doing everything handcrafted. We're going to do sort of a Far Harbor like expansion. There were employees of Bethesda that were comparing this to Far Harbor. So people's expectations started to rise in that way. And I just don't think it comes together. I think it's just another example of Bethesda not really knowing how to
And
put this stuff together.
And what do you think that the fact that, because I think we also have to look at this model in particular, because of course a lot of people had this DLC already. I saw some people in the chat as well. I paid $30 for it last year, but you paid, of course, for the early access because that was basically the premium edition. Yeah, people were super hyped for the game. I think you could play like quite some days early. I don't remember how many days, but
I think it was like
was
5.
pretty significant.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was pretty significant for a game of that caliber. Like a lot of people wanted to jump in, so then $30, and it was like $30 next to your Game Pass subscription if you played it through that. So that's why a lot of people did it. Maybe that is why they did not go as crazy with the budget, because they were like, yeah, but a lot of people already bought it, so let's put that budget. And this is, of course, me maybe hopeful for what the potential of the next expansion is. But maybe that's the reason. I think $30 is also crazy, but maybe they priced it like that because otherwise, what was the benefit of that premium edition? So what are you pricing the early access? So I think 30 is crazy. It should have been 20 max. But yeah, maybe because of the premium edition, they kind of went in that direction. But I'm also curious because I'm not sure if you looked at the Steam charts. There's like no bump or anything for this DLC. You would expect them to go. I mean, this is the first time that we have new content for the game. I mean, I don't count then the mods, of course. That's still significant, but like that's not on the same level, obviously. And a lot of people had it already. So you would think this would push the. I mean, with the Elden Ring DLC, obviously from a different caliber, but that game got insane numbers again after the expansion released, and everyone had to buy that expansion. So you see, it kind of goes up, but it's not as significant as you would maybe think, right?
Yeah, so it dropped on the 30th. And it went the day before, they peaked at like 14,000. Day of the launch, they were at 21, 22, and then 3,000 players dropped off the next day. And today, at the same time, 1819 UTC, at the same time, they're down another 2,000 players. So they did win some players back, but even now, there's only maybe 2,000 more people than were playing it back on Sunday. And so, I mean, it confirms that there's people that are playing the expansion, maybe a few thousand more than are regularly playing the game, but they are.
That's not a lot.
It's not a lot, and it's also.
And those people probably bought it already.
Yeah, so I think they probably owned it. I think you read my mind when you wanted to bring this up, because I think it's the elephant in the room. Why try hard with this? Whether it's, we say try hard, but that usually means like budget, assigning teams. If you could make this with 15 people, why would you put 150 on it if you've already sold it? And if it doesn't really matter, because even if it does really well, chances of new players coming back or coming in, or old players coming back and buying this who didn't already have the deluxe, it's pretty low. And I think that certainly was a factor in the overall scope of this. But and some people say, well, it's $30 and that was basically built into the early access. That's how they could make more money on the launch. And I get all of that, but it doesn't change the fact that this has a $30 price tag. And for $30, no matter which other mainstream expansion you look at, that is a poor value. It just is. You might really like Shattered Space, but $30 for this is ridiculous. It just is when you compare it to other expansions from other peers in the open world adventure game space. It's just a ridiculous price point for what is here.
Can I get a Horizon win? Because Burning Shores, $20.
Yeah,
way better. Burning Shore.
I think I even said in my little review critique thing of Burning Shores, I was like, the last encounter, which now I guess we can talk about because it's far enough after. I don't worry about spoilers.
It's in the freaking art.
Yeah, like the final thing with the gigantic monster robot climbing down the cliffside, almost by itself justifies the purchase price. It's so cool and epic.
It's really cool.
But like that's the thing is I keep waiting for those big set pieces. I keep waiting for something
That
crazy.
was also a year, by the way. That was also a year, and you really see that they kind of went crazy with like there's so much in that DLC if you kind of look back on it. And sure, it was still Forbidden West, so it would not change your mind on it. But I think for people who might not be into Horizon, they could still see, I get why you like that. And looking at this, it's like, I guess. Also, I played it on Series X. It's still wild that this is kind of the only exclusive that is actually worth mentioning when you're like, okay, so I'm gonna get a PlayStation or an Xbox. I know with how Microsoft is doing now, that discussion, like it's obvious that you probably go for a PlayStation, but Starfield is the only kind of game on that level, on that scale. I mean, what else? Like Hi-Fi Rush maybe, but yeah, that's not for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to start to change real quick. I think it's going to be fascinating to see a year and a half from now because PlayStation will have put out probably maybe the Horizon multiplayer game by then. They'll have allegedly Ghost of Yotei, probably Fair Game $, maybe
No.
Marathon will be out by then. But Death Stranding 2 should be out next year at some point. So they'll have some stuff like that. And then Xbox is also going to be coming out swinging with all sorts of stuff like Doom. They've of course have Indiana
But Doom
Jones
is on PlayStation day one.
Oh, well, boom. Yeah, I spaced that.
And Indiana Jones will then also be on PlayStation.
Yeah, in the spring. Then they wait for applause. Just
oh
claps.
My god,
it was
that was
so
like
awkward.
The weirdest moment of the year.
It was so weird.
Did you watch the Xbox streamers reacting to it?
Oh, I did see some clips.
It, right?
Yeah. So funny. Just the ick face on everybody's face.
And they were really like, take that, PlayStation. And then Jeff like, oh, we have one more thing to announce. And they were like, huh?
And there was one guy who was like, no. And then they revealed it was so good. But anyway, yeah, I just think, there's perhaps the takeaway from Shattered Space at the end of all of this is just it's a DLC literally not made for me or maybe even for you or for, I know Maddie said he was quite angered by it. Colt Eastwood, a notable Xbox YouTuber, he also did not like it and hasn't bothered finishing it because he's just bored. Like even those people who historically have done a lot of defense for BGS and Xbox in general, even they're like, it's just not for me. And I think that that's the main thing is that this was a DLC made for people who loved the base game. And if you did and you thought the writing was great and all that,
but I love the base game. It's still not.
It's just so dry. I'm shell shocked at how dry the writing is, and even the performances are so monotone.
Yeah, no, and what I was like alluding to earlier, like I played in the performance mode on Xbox. The frame drops are insane. Like again, this is your exclusive for that platform, and I know, of course, it was in development way before they bought Bethesda, etc. But it's still. Yeah, positioned as that. Like imagine Spider-Man 2 launching on PS5 and running like this. It's crazy. It just there are maybe some shots where I'm like, oh, this can look pretty. I saw your video and on PC it certainly looks way better, but I'm like looking at this and it's like, ooh, this is like a PS3 quality right there. So yeah, it's sadly not great, but I am really of the mind like drop Starfield. I really think, and I want to live in that timeline where Bethesda did not get bought, where they did not have unlimited money. I don't think they were gonna like support Starfield like this. They would have dropped it maybe, or maybe still do like the mods and stuff. But then be like, okay, now we gotta have this Fallout game out, this Elder Scrolls game out ASAP, because otherwise we're going under. Like we've talked about we talked about it before. Like Hi-Fi Rush did not sell. What else did they put out? Like of course Indiana Jones. It's not gonna sell. And now they're dropping, like there have already been rumors about the next expansion next year. Like they want to release an expansion like this next every year. But if you look at the numbers and people just not caring, like the only thing I can think of is that they want to launch a nice complete edition on PlayStation to have like a better package. But that's of course not that should not be their plan, or like really be one of the things they are really thinking of, because they should promote this other platform. But I really think that Bethesda would be in a completely different position if they were not bought, because then they had to do it, then they had to make money, and Starfield did not like. I mean, they said biggest launch, but that was because it was on Game Pass. I really am curious what the situation would have been if this was not backed by the unlimited Microsoft dollars.
Yeah, I also I'm getting a strong odor, and I have gotten the odor for the last year of complacency from BGS and from a lot of Xbox studios, frankly. And you also see it on the other side. You know, Bungie is a great example where they were bought for $3-something billion by Sony, and they were treated as their own company, and they didn't feel like they really needed to push. Their former attorney, I believe it was, he came out and said, yeah, it's good that PlayStation's finally pushing them, because they've been treating it like a vacation home. Like nobody's taking work super seriously. Nobody feels the pressure. Nobody's really feeling that hustle, because they don't need to. They always have a job guaranteed. And I worry that with this expansion for Starfield, like part of the reason people have asked, like, Luke, why do you continue covering it? Why do you keep talking about it if you don't like it? It's simply because I have been a fan of BGS for ages. Like technically my channel got started making like Fallout 4 hype videos back in the day, before I like stopped doing YouTube for a while and went back to it. But technically the first like videos I really did that got me to like 2,000 subscribers was Fallout 4 speculation and hype videos. I loved it. I love BGS of old. And then I just steadily got burnt more and more and more. And so I cover it almost like a labor of love, where I want them to succeed. I want them to go back to the days when they were slaying, when they were doing great work. There was a time, I know it's crazy, but there was a time when people, like the most hyped games and the highest quality games were Bethesda games, where BGS, if they release something, it's winning game of the year. Like it's locked in, just like Naughty Dog nowadays, when it's like whenever Naughty Dog releases something, it's probably winning game of the year.
Or Rockstar.
Or Rockstar or Larian nowadays, you know, it's on that level. And now that's so funny to think of, because people are like, no, if Bethesda puts something out, it's going to be kind of mediocre and it'll be fine at best. But I want them to get back to those days, because then we get more games. Do you think I want a bad Fallout game? I want a really good Fallout game. I want a really good Elder Scrolls game. I don't want to have to just rely on CDPR to nail The Witcher 4 for my fantasy fix. Like, I want BGS to be at their top. But lying about the quality of this stuff, or being easy on them, I won't necessarily just say lying, but I do feel like a lot of people go easy on them, because it's like, yeah, their games are buggy, but that Bethesda games have always been buggy. That's not an excuse, and it shouldn't be. Like, oh, well, yeah, the levels are small. Yeah, the DLC could have been worse. Yeah, it could have been worse. I had
some issues, but it was not like insane. It was not as you would expect.
Yeah, or
and the mods worked.
Yeah, the writing maybe wasn't the most compelling, but like, you know, the cult is just, that's how the people in the cult talk. They talk monotone and boring. So it's actually a feature. It's not a problem. It's part of it. It's okay. Well, as long as we're playing like Say the Stupid Thing game, you win. Congratulations. But patting them and patting them on the head when they barely do anything, that doesn't help them do better work. It just doesn't. And that's what drives me crazy with like the fanboys, is I don't think you're actually helping the company you claim to love. Telling BGS that this DLC is amazing and is the best thing they've ever done doesn't help them. It won't help them with the Elder Scrolls 6, because if they take this approach to Elder Scrolls 6, you thought the blowback from Starfield was messy? Just wait. Just wait. So
Oh yeah, but do you agree they should just drop this, right? Like
yeah.
why are they support like again? This feels like a labor of love from them, and that's totally fine. But you had your shake. You now released everything that you promised. Put these people on stuff that people actually want to play and that Microsoft desperately needs.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
I agree. I think it reminds me of what's her name in Mean Girls when it's like, stop trying to make fetch a thing. It's not. That's basically what this is, where stop trying to make Starfield a thing. Like, they're trying to treat it like it's Elder Scrolls or Fallout and it deserves all these expansions and DLC and mod and stuff. And it's just like, guys, I know there's some people that like it. There's like 10,000 people, 15,000 people. Looks like in the last, month or so, it peaks around 11,000 every weekend. So there's about 11,000 people that are playing it.
More people are playing Fallout 4 right now.
Yeah.
That says enough. If you own, like, it's not like that's the same with our channel. Like, I want to make videos on everything, but I can better spend my time on things that people actually want to watch. Because yeah, that makes way more sense. And of course, you try to balance it with things you like. But again, I really think if they did not have the banking from Microsoft, they like that's what in like to already kind of tease the next situation we're going to talk about. Like Ubisoft kind of has to focus on Assassin's Creed and has to make sure it's the best possible because otherwise they have a serious problem. And I don't think like if this DLC was even worse, try again next time.
What's the recourse? There isn't any. And to be clear, I want to just stress in case this was misunderstood on the part of Nissan 86, do not abandon your games. We're not saying abandon like support. Like if anything, they should improve performance and stuff.
I mean, they
we're
had
saying
a year of support already, which is more than most games get. So.
Yeah, and what we're saying is just why are you going to commit to doing 2, 3, 4 years of expansions if you're going to be spending a year to put something of this quality out? I would rather them not bother with the expansions catering to a dwindling player base and instead maybe focus on trying to pump out, pre-production on Fallout 5 or speed run getting Elder Scrolls 6 ready for polishing phase. Like I'd rather they work on that stuff because at least players will connect with it and be interested. But
yeah, it's not like it's the same people working on those other franchises. It's if they're working on Starfield, that person cannot be helping with Elder Scrolls, and they're a relatively small studio for these big games. So I don't know. If I was Phil, I would kick the door and be like, "Quit this space adventure. Let's make some actual money here."
Yeah, I mean it's the more time they commit to Starfield. And the more money and resources they commit to it, the less they'll be able to apply to bigger franchises that people connect with more, like Fallout, Elder Scrolls. Right now, it looks like Fallout 4 or Fallout 5 rather will come out roughly 20 years after Fallout 4, give or take a couple years, based on their current.
You thought GTA was bad.
Yeah, 20 years. And Todd has said when Maddie asked him, are there plans for spin-off titles or like a New Vegas kind of thing? I think it was Maddie.
Yeah.
And Todd said, I think it's okay for people to miss things. ... Which for you read between the lines. It basically says, no, I think it's good that 20 years will be between releases because it means they'll be more hyped for when we do it. He doesn't want to give it to another company. I think Phil should. I think the internet would melt if he announced it, but
no, I don't. I really think right now, if they find the right part, if it is Obsidian, I don't think people would be mad.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think people would be happy.
Yeah, I think
that's the crazy part.
I think the internet would melt in a good way. I think people would be super hyped. I think people would love it if they got the chance to play another smaller Fallout game. But I think Todd doesn't want that to happen because he doesn't want to let go of his baby. And last time they did that with Fallout New Vegas, what happened? Bethesda, who owns Fallout, started being considered the secondary studio in terms of quality with Fallout. Everybody's like, well, Fallout New Vegas is the best Fallout game. and they don't even own the IP. They don't even own any like it's not even their franchise. And I think that's a little humiliating even now a decade later. But, you know, all of this is beside the point. It's just for Bethesda right now, it feels like there's a complacency. They don't need the drive to push quality first and foremost. And I think this expansion is a perfect example of that. And even now, there are people defending it.
Fine. Like, I'm happy for people that like it and do like it, but you have to. I mean, those people that like this probably also like Elder Scrolls and Fallout. And yeah, you had your Starfield fix now. I think it's time to move on.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I think the really telling question is just to ask. So I get you like Shattered Space. For $30, you're getting this. Do you want the Elder Scrolls 6 to be made with this same philosophy? Swap out the guns with axes and swords. Swap out this spaceship for a carriage. You know, swap the red light filter for a blue one because you'll be on the coast. Do you want this just stretched into an Elder Scrolls game? Is that really what you want out of ES6? And I think a lot of people, if they pause and they really think about it, they'll say no. And I think it's because what people are hoping for that is a lot more than I think Bethesda is able to deliver at the moment. But the only way they would push to be able to deliver more is if it's mandated, is if it's demanded by the player base or by Phil and the people on high at Xbox. But I don't think anybody's putting pressure on Bethesda. I don't think fans are putting pressure on Bethesda. It just doesn't work. Arcade Portal in chat says someone with 12,000 hours in Skyrim, in just Skyrim, I would walk off into the sunset before playing that. But that's the thing. Bethesda games are iterative. So they start one way and then the next release is altered a little bit. Maybe they add in a new system like base building and then they just refine what they did before. Next game, add some new stuff to the same system, and then the process carries on and so forth. So for ES6, it will play probably pretty damn similar to Starfield in the motions. Now, they might go fully handcrafted for the map, but look at this. This expansion is their attempt at a handcrafted map after all this time, after a decade since Fallout 4. Do you want this quality of open world design and everything from Elder Scrolls 6? I don't think so. And I think if people really honestly ask, it's probably not what they actually are hoping for. So anyway, I could ramble about it all day because I do want them to succeed. And what I get frustrated by are people making excuses for them because it doesn't help make the franchise better. It doesn't make the company better. If anything, it coddles them into complacency and mediocre work. And we've seen the behavior all over the place. Todd's asked, how do you respond to the mixed reception of Starfield? And he says, well, we had more players than any game we had ever released before. You didn't answer the question.
Because you were on Game Pass.
Yeah, you were on Game Pass. Like, I'd hope so.
Would be wild if you did not get more players. But to be fair, that's gonna happen because that's what you see right now with the Starfield numbers. Nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
They had people. They could like I really think Starfield was that people in their mind made up this game, and then when they started playing it, and because a lot of people did not have a horse in the race, they just got a subscription to Game Pass, could boot it up, and they did not have to buy it. So they did not have to, like, when you buy a game, you obviously are gonna give it more chances because you spent the money, right? And then maybe at one point it will click. You're way more invested. With Game Pass, I think people were like, no, whoa, why am I looking at loading screens all the time, and etc. etc. And yeah, then and yeah, this DLC is then not gonna grab you. But I would argue that maybe if the DLC was good, it would not grab people because they were like, yeah, I did not like the base game, so why would I, jump into this? So I do think, again, at one point, and that's kind of the next story. Like at one point, you lose that sort of favor with the players. And you have to work again. And I think the next games have those, like the next Elder Scrolls, people are gonna compare it to Skyrim. They are not gonna think of Fallout 76 and Starfield. So they have that in their favor. But yeah, still, I do think they have to get to work on that.
Yeah. So, all told, what are my thoughts on the Starfield DLC? that's how we'll leave it. Now, what about something that is the opposite of boring? What's something we could talk about that is painfully exciting, where there's just constant discussions about it? Do you know what I'm
Dragon
talking
Ball
about?
Z Sparking Zero trophy list.
Yeah, baby.
If you are a world tournament champion, you get a trophy. You also wanna get a victory in the Cell games because that will also get you a trophy. And don't forget, like I know some people forget about this, but Goku Saga, complete that. I hope that's not a spoiler. ...
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, you can look at the trophy. It's very doable, so people say. So you can be done. You can stop playing that game in a moment. I think we should look at the super chats before we move on.
Oh yes. Thank you. Good point, Joe Raptor, a better host than I. I'll start at the top, and we will work through these. I'm sorry if we are if it's not like pertinent anymore. We'll try to piece together what you meant by them. But again, thank you to all of the people who super chat and who send in subs and all of that stuff over on Twitch as well. Also, just in case you're not familiar, you can watch anywhere you want. We stream on YouTube and Twitch, so we're glad to have you either way. Okay. Basil Barrel Spinner also gave out 4 community subs on Twitch. Very generous. Thank you for that, my friend. That's very, very generous. We've got over on the YouTube side of things, Zoob gave 2 Rocksteady shows need vision before taking advice. I think in general, Rocksteady's got many problems to sift through right now.
I mean, to be fair, to chime in on the Suicide Squad, like they're not even trying anymore. Like it's not like Bethesda with Starfield, where they are really trying. At least, yeah, that's what they are kind of communicating. Like, to be honest, I think you could also look at it like, why are they even doing it? Do you really think that people will get angry if they were like, this is not worth it anymore, we're gonna quit? And do you really think that when they at one point announced their Batman game, which is seemingly what they're working on, that people are like, oh, but you did not finish season 3 and 4 for Suicide Squad, so I'm not gonna play this game? I don't know if that's the case. So why are they doing? Is there really some contractual obligation? Like, why is this? Why are they continuing this? It's wild.
I think there's 2 potential things. One person did throw out something interesting to me. I haven't confirmed it. I don't know if this is true. But the first thing is that they pretty clearly have had the seasonal content done for like a year and a half at this point. It was supposed to launch middle of last year. So Fair. All the stuff is already done. So they're just sitting on it. Might as well put it out. You could say, why not just dump it all at once? Fair point. Beyond that, the other point that this person brought up in the comment section of one of our clips that I thought was interesting is it's pretty clear that Rocksteady / Warner Brothers signed an exclusive marketing deal with PlayStation, which is why they revealed the original gameplay in the PlayStation, like State of Play, I think it was, or maybe it was even a showcase in early 23. And likely as part of that deal, they signed an agreement that PlayStation would get exclusive marketing rights to the seasonal updates as well. And therefore, they have a contractual obligation to still go through with those seasonal updates because they signed away the marketing rights to those to PlayStation. But now PlayStation doesn't really want anything to do with it, so it creates sort of a weird...
Yeah, but then you would think that they could like bail out of that, right?
You would think. You would think.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Maybe my take would be that because it's of course still set in the Arkham universe, that these characters are still dead, but we know they might come back. That maybe their next game will be in the Arkham universe as well, and if they don't finish this story with these seasons, they kind of leave that in a weird spot or something. Maybe that's
maybe
another reason.
That's not a bad thought. Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll read the next one. Oh god. Where is it? I'll try to put it on screen so people can also see what we're looking at. Blake sent in 5 with how Shattered Space was for that price point. Just convinces me not to get any future expansions for Starfield. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. Confidence, I think, is pretty low.
Exactly. Like if you really bought this for 30, like not part of the premium edition, that's kind of crazy.
I think the only people that would defend it are people like Jor said earlier who bought it for $30 last year, and enough time has passed, it doesn't feel
girl
like
math.
they did it. Yeah. Yeah, the Starbucks math where like you paid for the whatever Starbucks card to be charged up and you're like, see, so I'm not really spending the money. I spent it earlier.
I spent it earlier, so it doesn't count anymore.
Do I need to spend $50 on this? No, but it's on sale $5 off, so I'd be stupid not to spend it, right? Zoob, also thank you for the 5. What game had explosive sales in the sparse February window, so publishers decided to crowd it for several years thereafter? I bet Horizon, our resident Horizon fan, knows which game dropped in November or February and popped off. There was a...
Wait, what? Were we talking about September or February?
February.
What are we talking?
Yeah, what game had explosive sales in the sparse February window, so publishers decided to crowd it for several years thereafter? Used to be February and January is where you sent your game to die if it wasn't going to sell well.
I mean, I think, and this maybe is not the answer. I know what you're alluding to, but I won't give in. No, but the first Dying Light, remember that game launched in January 2015 and did very, very well, and that I think helped to show, okay, wow, there are more windows than the end of the year. But yeah, over the years we had many. I mean, the Switch launched in like early March.
That's what I was going to bring up is Tears of the Kingdom. Well, not Tears of the Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild
was the big one. Yeah.
Zero Dawn, Wildlands, like many like Capcom has shown for years and years that like window is very lucrative. Like Resident Evil 7 launched in January, and they've been like doing, of course, Dragon's Dogma. Like many of their games launched in an early window.
Yeah,
Hogwarts
Elden Ring
recently. Yeah.
So it used to be like the ick spot. Like if a game's coming out there, it's probably not going to be very good. Like back in the early PS4 gen.
Oh yeah.
And then it popped off, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, no, gamers want games to play year round. So maybe we just put something there as long as it's good. Like part of the reason everybody just assumed games in January and February were going to be bad is because the only way they ended up there is if they were delayed out of the holiday season because they were really, really rough. But then they started specifically targeting it. And now we're going to have games like Kingdom Come and Monster Hunter Wilds and all sorts of stuff in February that is going to be captivating. So,
yeah. What do you think? Something is gonna move? I have a feeling something has to, right?
Yeah,
the February spot.
I'd say the two most likely ranked. I think Avowed is up there. I think Avowed is possibly delayed. After that, I'd probably say that Kingdom Come.
To remind people, it's Civilization 7. Kingdom Come, Shadows, Avowed, Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, Like a Dragon, Pirate, Yakuza in Hawaii, and Monster Hunter Wilds, all in February right now. And they're like 2 weeks apart. It's like the February 11th till the 28th.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Just says Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is going to sell so well. I mean, I think so too, but apparently they were a little spooked because the delay, whenever you're a big open world adventure game and you launch near another open world adventure game, that's always something you should give consideration and thought to. And being next to Monster Hunter and next to Assassin's Creed Shadows is
breaking news.
Oh,
Assassin's Creed Shadows currently has a co-op mode in development.
Who is that? Insider Gaming?
Yeah.
It's got to be right.
The new co-op mode, codenamed League, is under development at Ubisoft. It doesn't have a release date due to the game's recent postponement. With specific details on what the mode actually entails are slim. Presumably, the co-op mode will see Naoe and Yasuke fight side by side. That's insane. That isn't the only multiplayer experience. Yeah, and then they're talking about Invictus that we, of course, heard about a while back. And yeah, that should be out next year is what Tom here is saying. A fully fledged multiplayer experience. And then other games in development, including Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Remake, Hexe, which has been described as the darkest Assassin's Creed to date. That's crazy. when I heard about like Invictus and that they were doing separate multiplayer games, I was like, yeah, then it doesn't make sense to have like co-op added to to Shadows, because yeah, that would compete. But like hearing, I think Jonathan, French YouTuber Jonathan, who also has some source, he like compared it to Fall Guys or whatever. At least it sounded completely different than what Shadows, yeah, would be. So this actually makes sense, and I think that would be pretty exciting. But this would have been like a huge surprise. So I'm kind of sad that it's. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, it is what it is.
I mean, it makes me, the fact that there's been no rumblings about it would make me think that this was going to be like the year one expansion update as they add multiplayer to it, kind of like they did with Ghost of Tsushima with the multiplayer mode.
Yeah. But that was like out of nowhere. Remember, nobody saw that coming.
And I mean, I will say for everybody, because I don't want to just hop on any bandwagons where anything is announced for this and it's like, oh, garbage. I really like the co-op in AC Unity. I really like going through like black box missions or assassination missions with a friend where like one of us can be distracting the guard over there while I sneak in here. I think it's really cool. It's like co-op Hitman when it's working well. So I actually really like the idea of Assassin's Creed with co-op mechanics. I'm open to it. I know back in like 2014 when Unity was announced, co-op was anathema. I mean, co-op was not something you wanted to brag about. But nowadays, I think it's more acceptable. And with this, I'm not opposed to the concept. I don't know how it would work doing, because I like the idea for stealth missions, working with friends. Having one of your friends play as Yasuke and then the other, like you get to play as Nawe. I don't know how that would work with missions where like you're trying to be stealthy while he's just going in smashing stuff. So I don't.
Yeah, that doesn't work at all. Yeah.
I don't know how they would plan on doing that, unless they're planning on doing like, you know, maybe more characters. The co-op mode will see Nawe and Yasuke fight side by side using different combat abilities to take out enemies. I personally don't like the idea of just fighting waves like in arena with a friend. Maybe the combat feels way better in the hand, but based on
it's
the photos
it's presumably.
Oh, okay, you're right. That word's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah. So like we know that the game also has these shinobis that you can recruit in the world, and that you can even call, so kind of Brotherhood style, which was of course really cool. I hope it's more like that you create your own shinobi and then use, because that's of course a thing. Yasuke can use weapons that Nawe cannot use, and the other way around. So having this co-op mode where you can, for the first time, switch, like do combinations that first were not possible, and to make your own character, I think that would be way more exciting. And that is also how the shinobi system seems to work. How you can like give equipment to those characters. So let's hope it's that.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, what I find interesting though is specifically the new co-op game mode codenamed League is under development at Ubisoft, but doesn't have a set release date due to the game's recent postponement, affecting the entire Assassin's Creed pipeline, which I think is the more interesting thing. Is apparently this delay has affected everything that they're doing, like ripple effects through the entire thing. Like if Invictus, they're saying, he says what? It's understood that Invictus, a full-fledged multiplayer game, will come in 2025. I wouldn't be surprised if this means that that's booped to 26 and that Hexe gets delayed and everything else gets delayed.
I don't know, man. I would not agree with that, because it's only 3 months. And I mean, Mirage was delayed like a lot of times as well. I don't think that pushed Shadows. Like that was always planned for the end of this year. So
what I think well, I was just gonna say, to clarify, sure. I think why I would say that is because Yves Guillemot in the investor call said that, like the last minute one, he said that they are realizing after Outlaws that they need to approach things differently, that they cannot now release the game and then fix what he called were minor frictions, I think is how he phrased it, They can't do that. They used to fix those after launch. Now they need to be fixed ahead of time. So they've indicated, whether true or not, but they've indicated that their standard now has been raised and they need to get things more refined than they previously would have. And I think that means that the timelines for everything are lengthened. That's how I read it, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a game like Hexay that was out at the end of 2026, I do think they can maybe add some extra. Like, they can probably do something in that pipeline, I think, to make sure that that game's... Like, you don't want... Like, that would mean that you're not launching big Assassin's Creed games at the end of the year anymore. And that's, of course, I think what they always want to push. But I do think that, like, next year they are seemingly going to have the new Far Cry, Ghost Recon, or the Splinter Cell remake. I do think those might be moved around or given more time because of what is happening here. I would not be surprised if that's the case, but I think Hexay, like, you want to have that at the end of 2026, for sure. So, but we will have to wait and see, of course.
Yeah. I'm still surprised that Tom is getting more and more leaks and info. I mean, I thought we knew pretty much all there was to know about all this, but
I mean, we still, like, let's not forget, we have the Animus Hub as well. That's still, like, a big question mark for people who are not familiar. That's, like, the hub, so kind of the Call of Duty HQ, where if you boot up an Assassin's Creed game starting with Shadows, you will go to this hub and see other Assassin's Creed experiences as well. We still don't know anything about that. I also would not be surprised if some of the Battle Pass ideas they had are getting pushed to not, like... get that in the way of the Shadows launch, because, like, we can quickly go over that here. We of course talked about that a bit last week as well, but we got some extra info on how this delay is gonna impact Shadows and how they're making a lot of consumer friendly moves to win people over. One of which is giving away the first expansion for free to everyone who pre-orders the game for the new release date. And they're launching on Steam day one, early access, the gold and ultimate editions are gone, so they just want you to get the game. Then they got you, and then maybe later on they will be like, okay, we won some people over again. Let's now roll out some other ideas we had.
Yeah. I think I don't know what the right word is. Optimistic is probably too generous. Maybe hopeful. I don't know. I think it's important to call out the bad things, of course, when we see bad things. It's also really important to call out the good things. Bring in the game to Steam day one. That's a good thing. Trying to, like, strip out the early access, push for pre-order stuff. That's a good thing, I think. And I hope that we see them in this next 3-month period. Maybe they're, like, planning, okay, we're going to do, like, XP boosts, and we're going to do, like, the, like, Helix credits out the ass, and we're going to have 15 skins available day one. Maybe we don't do that. Maybe we do that in 6 months, and we just let the game speak for itself. That all is great. And I've said many times with these studios and publishers, remove the ammunition. Like, especially Ubisoft, people are coming in looking for reasons to be upset with you. And when you give them a live service hub with battle passes and then mini battle passes and all this stuff, you are just handing them cannons and laser guns and death rays to shoot you with when you don't need to. Like, win people over with the quality of the game, and the people who really, really enjoy the game will still be around when you offer an expansion, when you offer DLC, when you offer cosmetics and stuff like that. But you're not in the position where you can play it so cocky. And I think that that's maybe what they're realizing. They thought they were invincible with Star Wars, of all things. Surely that will sell well, but it just doesn't follow. You got to win players over from the very, very outset.
And for that game, they delayed the microtransaction store, by the way. So they already did that. But,
yeah. So imagine the blowback would have been even worse.
yeah.
Can you imagine? Oh, man. Let's see. Let's catch up on a few super chats. Let's see. I think I never even fully caught up. I think I got distracted.
Oh, damn. Yeah. Sorry.
That's very breaking news. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Let's see, where were we? Sparse sales, we saw that. Nuke World style DLC, Starfield is dead to me. Hey, that rhymed. Did you mean to rhyme that, Zoob? That's great. Sumaya, thank you for that super chat. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero on the top sellers of Steam. Love to see it. Do you love to see that, Jor?
Sorry, what?
Sparking Zero is one of the top sellers on Steam right now, apparently.
I saw like news stories recently that like bots are very, very prominent on Steam right now, so you can't trust any of the stats.
Yeah, you just can't trust anything nowadays, man. It's crazy.
And Samaya, like I think you bought like it's good to like save some money as well. Like don't like buy unlimited amount of copies. I see you. It has to be bots or Samaya like buying 1,000 copies. I don't
it must
believe
be. Yeah. There's no other possible explanation. Fabrice, thank you for the 5. Why would Bethesda keep a team working on a new expansion when Skyrim was released 13 years ago and Fallout 9 years ago? Because they want Starfield, in my opinion, to be as big as Fallout and Skyrim and Elder Scrolls in general. And they think by continuing to do expansions, creations, stuff like that, it can get to that point. I don't personally see that coming, but you know, maybe Starfield 2 will convince me. I don't know. I just don't personally see it. Glocka, thank you for the 5. Hi, Luke. Hi. How high are your hopes for Elder Scrolls 6? That franchise is their baby. I can't see them half-assing it, but my faith is shaking. No, I think they'll do their best work on it. I just think their best work is garbage at this point, and they're not being pushed to do better work. So I think they'll do their best. I just don't think their best is good enough. And I don't think there's any way it lives up to the hype. So yeah. I mean, if you thought Starfield looked and felt graphically and technically out of date, Elder Scrolls 6 will be releasing close to The Witcher 4 from CDPR. So just imagine the comparisons that will happen.
Because you would think that game has to run on Series S, right?
Probably.
Or are they gonna, or by that point, the next Xbox is already out and they will just drop it on that?
Yeah, it's gonna be close.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe if they stop with Starfield DLCs, they can
hire some more engineers to refine it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Braun, thank you for that too. You said the same things about Cyberpunk 2077, though. I'm not sure in the context when this would have dropped, but we were all extremely, extremely hard on Cyberpunk 2077. I would say rightly so when it launched. And then they have done an amazing job of turning it around into something pretty phenomenal. So they've worked their asses off to improve it. But how did that happen? It started with them saying it's not good. And we recognize that, and we need to be better. They had the CEO of the company go on camera and say, "We are so sorry." It was a huge deal, and everybody remembers it. And then they worked their asses off to prove that they were capable of more, and they did. With Bethesda, there is not even a single acknowledgement that anything was wrong with Starfield to begin with, and that's why I think people are concerned. Nissan, thank you for that. 10. This is just for not ignoring regular chat. Keep that energy. Cheers. Thank you, Nissan. Appreciate you, my friend. Very generous of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, we like to read all of the chat. It's of course tough in the podcast setting, but anybody who throws super chats, we got to give you a little extra love.
Yeah. 100%.
100%. Yeah. How else is Jor gonna afford Lego Horizon, the deluxe ultimate whatever edition?
I now suddenly have time for Lego Horizon because Shadows is delayed.
Yeah, see, it worked out.
Yeah.
It worked out. We're almost caught up, guys, and then we'll move on to our next little tidbit. Little Square Dude, what a name. I love it. I love your profile picture too. Any thoughts on the rumored StarCraft FPS game from Blizzard, and is there any hope of it being good? I mean, when Blizzard does, I was going to say when they do stuff, they don't miss, but they definitely missed with like Reforged, whatever that was, Warcraft. So yeah, I don't know. I'd be cautiously optimistic, but you just never know. You never know nowadays. And then Samaya, people,
the Far Cry boss is working on it. The Far Cry 5 director.
Oh, interesting.
He was working on Odyssey, the survival game they had.
Mm.
But that, of course, got canceled. So then they were like, "Oh, we got you. So what are you gonna do? Hey, let's. What the heck is this? StarCraft shooter? Yeah, we tried it back in the day. Why don't we try it again?"
Go for
And
it.
I'm not sure if it will ever see the light of day, but
Yeah, that's one of those projects that might just be doomed.
yeah.
And then Samaya, last question for Jor. Some people not liking female protagonists in Ghost of Yotei. Don't worry, I've got their back. Let me introduce you to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Plenty of buff white dudes punching each other, just how they like them.
That's actually very good. Yeah.
Oh
I
man,
suddenly have faith. Are there any female characters in the game?
I don't actually know. I can't say I've ever investigated or cared enough to look at that. Real quick, sort of also breaking news.
Uh-huh.
I mean, sort of. It's a discussion while accepting a special recognition award at the SEA Game Awards. So this is also from Insider Gaming. Little article. Larian Studio CEO says their next game might not come until 2029. Sad face emoji. Sven specifically said, I knew you'd pick up on that. It was just a joke. This was when they were asked if it was actually 4 to 5 years away. I don't know. We'll release it when it's ready. They're big games and it takes time, so don't hold us to a date. As an independent studio since 1996, we value the freedom to follow our creativity where it leads. And they've said that they're walking away from Dungeons and Dragons entirely and are doing something new. We don't know if that's still going to be fantasy, if they're going to be trying something like sci-fi related. We just don't know. But it would be crazy to see them just totally pick up the mantle of BioWare of old. And imagine if they do like their own sci-fi thing. And so it's basically like they have their own fantasy thing like Dragon Age, and they have their own fantasy or sci-fi thing like Mass Effect. And they just are like, yep, we're doing this now. And I'd be here for it.
There's another breaking news story.
Oh, God.
Horizon 3 launches 2029. Same week as...
Same week.
That's whatever Larian is doing.
Oh man, they really do know how to pick them. I'll tell you what. What are the odds? Okay, we have to say this.
The remastered is launching on the Dragon Age days.
When do you think the Horizon multiplayer game comes out?
Early 2026.
And what game do you think it launches on the same day as?
What are we looking at? Early 2026.
I'm gonna guess the new Gears of War or something like that. I mean, it's far enough away.
That won't matter.
It's gotta be something that would break it. Bloodborne 2. Like, with their luck, they'd just be like, oh yeah, we can take them on. Well, yeah, we'll be fine. Sure.
I mean, what if GTA 6 gets delayed to early 2026?
Dude, that would
be crazy.
3 in a row. It's like, okay, at this point, guys, what are we doing? Like, really, Herman? You thought you could take on GTA? Jesus.
I mean, it could be like either a Ghost Recon or the Far Cry game, because I can see that in that window as well. I don't know. Maybe the Monster Hunter Wilds expansion.
Yeah, they really do know how to pick them. I'll tell you what. Yeah. But anyway, are there any other little tidbits you wanted to get to, Mr. Joe Raptor?
Yeah, regarding the Shadows delay, a few things that we did not talk about last week, I think that I want to like kind of hear your take on as well. For one, they said that did we already? I think we did talk about the internal memo, right, from Yves Guillemot. So I looked at the because they also had their investor call, like kind of a urgent one, when they talked about the news, and they are lowering their expected revenue by 150 million for this quarter. So one person, like one investor during the call, was like kind of calculating in his head and said like, okay, so Star Wars Outlaws sold 2 to 3 million copies less than expected. And Insider Gaming reported that it only sold 1 million. So that's really, really bad.
Like, we thought it was not great. It's really not great. like really, really not great. And I've been trying to like evaluate, okay, is it people really were turned off by the kind of so-so reviews? Is it like, what is it that really did it in? And I just think people heard there were a lot of technical issues. It was buggy. AI was bad. And a lot of people just were like, okay, I'll just wait for it to go on sale in a few months. I couldn't even tell you how many comments I got of people saying, I'll just wait till Christmas or I'll just wait till Black Friday. There are people who want to play it, but their confidence level in the quality is so low. And then also their, like Ubisoft has just struggled to make this like FOMO where people feel like they need to play at launch.
Yeah.
And that's something PlayStation has been really good about, where PlayStation's able to just nail it. Where they can come out with God of War, Spider-Man, whatever. And even though technically you could play Spider-Man 2 6 months after it launches, getting it on sale, and it would be fine. It would be just as good.
I mean, you would be spoiled all over the place. Like that's also with these like big Sony games, like the TikToks and it's everywhere. Like,
But that's
you
the thing.
would know.
People care enough about the story.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
I think Ubisoft just has not gotten, or they've not been able to build that FOMO based around story spoilers or based around seeing cool gameplay stuff. Like, it's just not there. So people don't feel worried about getting spoiled with the story. People don't feel worried about this or that. They're like, yeah, I'll just get to it later.
I mean, with Assassin's Creed, it's like the most they have. That sort of, because there are people who really care about the lore, of course there. But yeah, we will see how that shakes out.
I do think that Shadows does better than Star Wars. It has to.
I mean, Mirage, in that same article, Inside the Gaming Notes, like Mirage sold 5 million copies in their financial year. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot. Lower price point, honestly, pretty straightforward. Pro-consumer offering, not like super monetized out the ass. It's just a solid little game. Yeah, it's not like amazing, but if you're looking for an old school Assassin's Creed fix, it's a good time.
Yeah.
And that's enough, you know?
They said in their investor call as well that it will cost them 20 million euro extra to develop the, or like to, for the delay, basically, like the extra development cost, which I thought was like interesting that they noted that. And that shows you that this game easily cost like 200, 300 million. If only 3 months is 20 million, because it was in development for more than 4 years. So, and basically that the developers have been pushing for a delay for some time, but Ubisoft simply did not want to listen. And but then when they got like the bad stats on Outlaws, they were like, we can't go on like this. We have to change something. And I would also argue that hopefully these changes, I mean, the changes are for the best. Like, they're coming back to Steam Day 1. They're removing their super expensive editions. It's just like the standard one. They're giving the first expansion away if you pre-order. It's all pro-consumer stuff. And maybe in a few years we will look back on it and being like, okay, so maybe it was nice for them that Outlaws was this game. Because otherwise maybe Shadows would have been it. And I think that would have been a way bigger problem for them because it's their own franchise. Like, they're never going to make a Star Wars game again.
Yeah.
They're not. They're never going to touch Disney again. And Disney is like probably like, this was not a worth it for either party involved.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even Bob Iger said, I think 2 months ago, he said one of the things he regretted was getting rid of the video game divisions that they had through like Lucas Games and stuff. And, you know, it's easy to say now, but at the time he gutted all of them, downsized all of them, and just said, we'll license it through EA. EA will make our Star Wars games. And we all kind of know how that went for years and years and years. So maybe we see like Disney, if they start to figure their crap out, maybe they start buying up developers themselves and trying to do stuff in-house again. Because I do think there's money to be made with like Star Wars games and with Disney IP games, but I think it's just such a tough sell to go to a company like Ubisoft and be like, give up 30% of your revenue just to be able to use the branding.
And resources, because they could have had a Division 3 out right now.
Mm-hmm.
But they went, and that would have sold way more than this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I like now they can apply all these learnings to Assassin's Creed, to Ghost Recon, to Far Cry, and those like franchises needed way more. Like they, so yeah, I think that's maybe looking back on it, that they're happy on it. Although they will have lost a lot of money on this.
Yeah.
I think breaking even is a best case scenario right now for them. Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
So yeah, I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to see it. I see somebody in chat said, I heard they were changing Yasuke. No, what's been said is that they're gonna they've been working on improving historical accuracy. They've been working on bringing in historical experts that understand like the architecture, the art styles, the armor, what it looked like, all of that stuff. They're refining that work to make sure it's as faithful as they can manage. And the reason they've had so many oopsies along the way is because they brought those people in way later in development than normal, which I also thought was interesting. It kind of echoes the feeling that this was rushed in many ways. But yeah, Yasuke's not, it's not like they're cutting Yasuke from the game. They're not going to swap him as a character. I saw people saying that on X, and that's just the most brain dead thing I've ever heard. Like, that's just not how video game development works. You can't make an entire video game around one character and then just redo it. Like, that doesn't work. So it's going to be Yasuke. Nobody's forcing you to buy it. Of course, like, it's up to you, but they're going to just try to polish it and get it to be the best game that it can be. And then I guarantee you moving forward, they're going to be a lot more cautious with some of these types of choices. They don't want to stumble into this kind of avoidable backlash again.
Yeah, I think your ammunition thing is totally right. And like, while I think that there is way more hate for this game than they're deserving, or like that it deserves, and we've seen that throughout the year for many projects. They did it to themselves as well. Like, yeah, like you said, like they brought in the historians like way later into the development than they normally would, for, I would argue, the most important setting in terms of how like the people in Japan like view their culture and stuff. You have to nail that, and I would argue that it's probably also a bit harder to implement than for some other settings. So to cut corners on that, I like they learn like that, like maybe that sort of stuff might cause the delay of other Assassin's Creed games where they're like, ooh, we did the same tactic for Hexe or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's
I do think you raise a very good point, though, is that the like Japanese culture is cherished and beloved by, of course, not just people in Japan, where their culture today is a continuation of that culture, of course, but also of people all around the world. There's a lot of people even in America who love Japanese culture and, you know, eat it up in all sorts of different ways, whether it's through media or through just reading or anime, whatever. And I think what they've been able to get away with in the past, like Odyssey, the game is far enough back, you can fudge with it, and it's not that big of a deal. Like, oh, is it true that back, like, that Leonidas would have fought in the same period as Minotaurs roaming the earth? Like, well, no, because Minotaurs aren't real. And then also, like, no, there's no such thing as magic, and then this and that. Like, but there's nobody that's like, actually, Leonidas is my great grandfather, and I really dislike how you disrespected him. Like, it's far enough back you can fudge with it. Same with, you know, going back 2,000 years to the Ptolemaic period in Egypt. You can fudge it. But with this, they needed to be much more precise and careful and cautious. And I think that whether it was intentional or not, like choosing Yasuke as the playable character on the male side, it just fits the narrative too damn well. It is a perfect example of like corporate pandering. And then to hear things like the hip hop music starting up whenever he starts fighting, it's like, you knew what you were doing. Like, don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining. I know you're pissing on my back, okay? Like, it's so transparent what you're doing. So I do think we'll see them be very, very cautious moving forward. And not just Ubisoft. Every other company is looking at this and going, thank God that's not us. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just something that is not worth the trouble. I mean, even now there's stories of other big projects that have faced blowback that have affected huge multi-billion-dollar corporations. Even like hell, the Snow White movie has faced tons of blowback for their star and for the first trailers they put out, and they're seeing mass layoffs within some of the production departments because of that. It's very hush hush, of course, but it's happening. And so I think that you're just going to see cascading effects of all of this. Corporations only really care about money, and if all of this stuff is costing them money, they're going to make changes because they just don't want to deal with it. So
yeah, for sure. And to round out this topic, like, what do you think the next way forward for them is? Do you think they go quiet now for a long time, and then maybe a month before launch, are we like, hey, we're back, we double checked all our marketing material, and we have a way polished product now? Or are they gonna drip feed us still till launch? What do you think?
I think they should go radio silent. I think it's pretty clear spending more on marketing does not mean that the game will sell better. That Star Wars Outlaws is the perfect example. They said they spent more on that than any other marketing campaign in the history of the company, and it did not translate to sales. So I think they should go radio silent. They should stop spending money on marketing. Then when they come out later, the approach should just be as pro-consumer, as straightforward and real as possible. Just let the game speak for itself. If it's a solid game, which I know this specific studio is capable of putting together a really solid game, let that speak for itself. Maybe it doesn't blow up immediately, but if the game is received well, whether that's at previews or reviews or whatever, eventually it will catch up and it will get there. I mean, even hell, now you're still seeing people like lose their minds over Dragon Age Veilguard because so many people just assumed that would flop. And then previews came out and everybody's eating it up and loving it. Maybe the final game isn't that good, but at least the previews were really good. So if you let the game speak for itself, and if the game is actually good, then I think eventually it could, at the very least, not be a total loss. But I think they need to stop giving people ammunition. They got to stop putting their foot in their mouth. They got to be just totally focused on the game and let that speak for itself. That's my outlook.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and hopefully, or I think that they hope that some of it will wash over, that people go in with a fresh mind into the new year, and then yeah, it will be fascinating. But like we stressed it last week as well, this has never happened that a mainline Assassin's Creed has been delayed. They're gonna miss out on a ton of money in the holiday season, but we learned that the game was simply not ready. So maybe like they would have like had a lot of sales initially, but then the word of mouth would got to them, and yeah, again, more ammunition. The game is buggy. You don't want to have those clips over the internet. If they can release a way more polished product now, it's gonna be great for the long run. So good on them. If I go to the Steam wish list, by the way, right now, and if I do Control F Dragon, which game do you think will shows up first?
Dragon Age?
No, Dragon Ball Z.
No.
is more wish listed than Dragon Age.
That's
the
funny.
Bots have taken over.
The bots. These bots are getting out of control, man.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. But like, it's wild that Borderlands 4 has more wish list already than Dragon Ball or Dragon Age. Little Nightmares 3 more than Dragon Age. Indiana Jones more than Dragon Age.
Dude,
they really have to get work. Yeah, they have to work on that, man.
Yeah, I am wondering if they go into overdrive with marketing. I mean, they've already been putting out a lot of stuff, but I think that's a game where they're going to rely on reviews and hope
Yeah.
that the reviews
Baldur's Gate
do really
style.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, because that game also initially didn't do that crazy, but then, of course, over time sold more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
I really hope it delivers because that would be the first time that we see a studio. Because I would argue that Bethesda have they recovered yet? I don't think they've recovered from Fallout 76 in a way that we want it, right?
Yeah, and people brought up earlier in chat, forgive me, I don't recall who mentioned it initially, but there's a really interesting video, level and quest design collaboration from Skyrim to Starfield. It's just a GDC talk posted 2 months ago where Daryl Brigner and Will Shen talk about the development process at BGS, making like going from Skyrim all the way to Starfield and the lessons they learned and how it works. But one of the most interesting things about it is that they basically like accidentally reveal that BGS is just a bureaucratic mess. There's way too many levels of management. It grew too big. They don't have the ability to manage teams and stuff. And I think that a lot of that is holdovers of like Fallout 76, where they expanded to do live service stuff. And then they were like, never mind. We don't, oops. So it's really fascinating. I recommend people go and watch it. It's really fascinating. But I agree. I am rooting for BioWare to pull this off, because if it is amazing, just how great would that be? One of the legends of the industry back making good stuff again. We should all be rooting for that. And I think if the game comes out and it's like a 7 out of 10, that will be rough. An 8 out of 10 is even on the edge. I think they need to be sitting in those 90s. And if they can do that,
88 or something, that would be perfect.
Yeah, then I think it sells well. But especially if it crosses that 90 mark, it's like 90, 91. I think then you could see a lot of people choosing to try it. I can see the splash screen banners all over Steam already. Like,
oh yeah, and with Assassin's Creed now pushed, like they, in terms of AAA games, have the market for themselves this holiday season. And Inquisition did very well because it launched in 2014 when there was no other game. So
yeah, that helped it.
See.
I went back and I tried Inquisition again recently.
Rolled up,
dude. No. Anybody who is saying, "Oh, I really wish they used the Inquisition combat for Veilguard," go try it again. Just install it. It's on Game Pass through EA Play, whatever. Go try it. You're going to be like, what the hell was I talking about? It is rough. The whole game is just rough. I'm amazed that ever won Game of the Year. But I know that if my wife hears me saying that, she'll be upset because she loves it. But I can't do it, man. I can't.
I totally,
So I'm glad they're making improvements. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We're going to cover it. I mean, allegedly, I would assume review codes go out probably in like 2 to 3 weeks. With a game that size, I would anticipate maybe even a 2-week review period. That would be amazing.
I hope so, man. I hope so.
Because it's going to be big. They haven't said how big it is. I tried to ask devs. I tried to ask the team. I tried to get it out of anybody. None of them would say. But it took us, like, I played 7 hours of the game, and I was playing individual little snippets of Act 1. The first half of Act 1, and then I played a snippet of the end of Act 1. And so if you say like, okay, maybe Act 1 was 30 hours total, maybe 40, maybe. And then you're like, oh God, there's 2 more acts. And they were saying that the later acts are just as big, if not bigger. So this could easily turn into like a 60 to 100 hour game, depending on how it's broken up.
That's cool.
It's a lot. Anyway. Thank you guys for hanging out with us.
But I will be playing Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered on the same day, you know.
You have it on the second screen, both microphones coming in, so you can stream 2 games at once. Yeah, it's going to be great.
God, yeah.
I can't wait. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. You guys are amazing.
Thanks.
We love the gosh darn heck out of you guys for making our dreams a reality. Much love. We'll be back next week. Go leave us a review on Spotify, and until next time.
And Apple Game or Apple Podcast, because we only have one, so you can be one of the few that have done that.
Yeah.
Did we already get an extra?
Because we always forget about that. It's a problem.
No, but someone did. They know who they are out there.
Someone.
Maybe it was me. Nah, it was not me.
Much love, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.